the framework of what TED can give us as an idea of how to do challenge-based learning with impact. So Ted, if you can introduce yourself and any thoughts you've had since our last conversation about trying to convene a group of educators and potential students for an activity.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Kevin. So I'm Ted LAI. I'm an education leadership executive with Apple, and that's just a fancy title for I work with school leaders, and I help them understand the power of technology that they're bringing in, so that learning looks different. You know, how are they considering what learning could develop into, and how students go ahead and express their knowledge in different ways. Um, I also help with some of our other teams. For instance, the Community Education Initiative. I'm not part of the team, but I help with some of the work they do, which includes the Racial Equity and Justice Initiative. And so that's now in its second phase. So it utilizes the challenge-based learning framework, where you get inspired, you start to dig in a little bit and analyze what you're looking at, and then you act upon it. And so at this point now, it's okay, we've been inspired. We know there are some challenges out there. So how can we go beyond just having conversations about it, and start to think through what are some possible solutions that we can move towards as educators. And we did this because, educators, they're asked to do so much. I was a former educator. I know you have so many different standards to teach, and at the same time, you have to be there for your students, to be a mentor, to be a thought partner. And so oftentimes teachers don't feel equipped to do things like creativity or coding or racial equity and justice conversations. So what are some things that we could do to help? And I'm really excited about this second part, because we were able to work with Dr. Martin Luther King's granddaughter, also a Dr. King, and work on some of the different ideas she had for bringing people through the process to get towards action. So, we are going to be launching that. It is not fully out. They did announce it, the partnership, but the material will be out on Monday. So don't go tweeting about it right now, or else I end up losing my job for having totally given it away. But we're also working with a couple different centers, like the Propel Center, to provide a coding academy for people who are disenfranchised, to be able to learn through the challenge-based learning process and learn coding, and again, utilize that kind of as a solution to some of the challenges they face.
Right, great. Thanks, Ted. We had a conversation, and I say we, Anna Marie is on the phone call. I think, Ted, you remember Anna Marie.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
were talking with a
Yes, hi.
lady from the Foundry, who's been doing outreach for the Academy of Software Foundation Diversity Inclusion Initiative. And that's why I wanted Tony Bayless on the phone, because I think I wanted to circle the wagon around something that we can do together in our lifetime. And so Anna Marie's challenged me to put something out there, as opposed to just marketing speak, about what could we do. And so I have a document that I wanted to share with everybody on the call.
I didn't say it that harshly.
Well, but yeah, but it got through, because I do have something that I want to propose as something that people can say yay or nay, could work as a pilot to getting all these school districts, these community colleges, these four-year universities together, who may have students who want to participate. And literally, it's a challenge, it's a competition. And I can offer up at this point some cash, to augment the attractiveness to some students who are looking to get some recognition and reward. I also have a couple of corporations who are willing to offer up some software, hardware, as well as some gear. But this is what I'm going to embed into the proposal for the activity that I want you guys to think about. And there's no date for launching this thing, but I do want to introduce it during Black History Month. So those are the things that I'm trying to collate, so that you guys may help me figure out, where there's a there. So any suggestions, comments, before we get off the call?
Well, I'd like to clarify what I was pointing out before, is just that we've got lots of reams of documents and lots of meetings and talks, and we need to concretize some of it. So imagining what would this program look like? Think about a number of students. Who would be the target person at each school that would help develop that? At AFI for the K through 12 program, we worked with LACO, the LA County teachers, and were able to address groups of teachers to get them on board. And then they worked with their students. So this may not be the same thing here, but it's just trying to parse this out into doable actions and imagine what kind of projects would we expect them to be working on? How would we put them together? How big would those teams be? How would they be connected? I actually thought later that maybe the Foundry, it seems like they had a online production system. So virtual production, especially today, since we're all remote, might be a really good thing to consider. And maybe some companies that are trying to develop that would get on board to help lead that part of it. Zoom, breakout rooms, small groups that can meet and discuss their projects together. You know, that's gets concretized further down the road, but we still, I think if we start to look at that and lay it out, especially to potential sponsors, collaborators, and partners, then they'll kind of get to see what it might look like.
Yes, absolutely. And what I like about what Apple has at least done is they've segmented for the 13 to 18 and then the 18 overs, because many people have delineated between what kind of target asset are they really looking for in a student, either as an intern, a mentor, a scholar. And so we have to be able to make sure that we have a minimum viable product that's going to hit the critical mass of corporations, organizations who want to play. And many of the ones that I deal with, they don't want to deal with K through 12 for various reasons, for FERPA and just a lot of other
that's
barriers.
a big one. Yeah.
But you know, I think that there is some way to make this initiative of giving people a chance to collaborate and create teams a way to bring in the younger people, because I do want to create as a side set for this a talent pipeline. And I would like to have young people exposed at the, you know, at the primary school level and secondary to some of these sets. So Ted, do you have any guardrails or anything that you can provide for me so that we don't get too far down the road of things that you couldn't even present to the Apple team?
You know, I think that one of the big things is you know, if it deals with education and if technology is involved, you know, Apple's always willing to talk. I think that it just depends on size and scale. Like if it gets to the point where we're trying to develop a partnership in LA where we're doing this, you know, cradle to career path, let's say, right? Because I mean, you know, that's an ideal kind of situation, right? Cradle to career workforce development type thing with opportunities. You know, I'm obviously not at that salary level to make those decisions. I can find people who can have those discussions, like the community education initiative, because that's essentially what they're starting to do by having coding from elementary through high school, and then partnering with community college and four-year colleges, so that you create this almost like coding academy. And again, those are also still based upon things like challenge-based learning, so that it's not just coding for coding's sake, but with some sort of relevance and context. So it, you know, depending on what the goals are, it may involve bringing in additional groups where I'm not necessarily making that decision, but they have more of the power to do so. Again, in terms of, I think I might have mentioned this to you before, in terms of talking in front of educators, that's usually a pretty much a-okay, especially if there are some leaders involved, either teacher leaders, administrators, community members who have an impact. I have pretty much some free reign to speak to almost anyone. If it, you know, but there's all these other pockets. So again, depending on scale, like if you're thinking, oh, we need to change something with how policy is done at the state level, you know, or at the government level, right? That's again, not me, but we also do have people who work in Apple called strategic initiative group people who actually go and they talk to the state senators and assembly people and say, hey, schools are looking for this. This is a challenge. What can we do about creating some legislation to provide funding or provide opportunities, et cetera? So, there are all these different, it's like juggling. There are a lot of different balls I could be juggling with, but, it may not be me per se doing it.
Right.
It's finding the right people.
Right. Well, one of the persons that I wanted to have on the call was Keisha Washington. She has a unique position inside of city politics as well as education and somewhere in between economic development and being a visionary. She had posed the challenge for me to create a accelerator incubator that focused on green and clean tech, but also bringing other disparate pedagogies into a place where there could be a cohort of two of students who could get exposure to these things, but they had not thought about what does that mean in terms of impact? What does that mean in terms of them creating something that could be measured as opposed to just a certificate? So I want to see if I can get this conversation wrapped back around with her to find some more of those leaders, those thought leaders who might be able to plug into your strategic group, Ted. But your messaging is going to continue to be important throughout any introductions. Because again, I know how compelling it could be for people who want to become leaders or want to become vanguards for changing the way the digital learners are being taught. And some people just can't do it because they're not in positions to, but they still believe in this shift or this change in how people are attacking 21st century education. So as part of what I want everybody to think of is I'm going to submit the document about how this challenge hack could be reverse engineered and then brought back together. And then what kind of speaking points can we make so that we can make sure that everybody who can put something for LA County or the regions of digital media and technology to have something to say. So that's my job, and I'll run it through some people to make sure that it's really sharp and focused so that we can start to act on it. Any questions, suggestions, or comments before we break? Because I know everybody's crazy busy right now.
One of the only suggestions I have would be, to also think through how, perhaps my role is after an event in terms of like a lot of the different things we've talked about are more, community college based, right? Young adults. And so, one of the sweet spots for me, because I work in K-12 really, I mean, that's, where I'm generally working. One of the sweet spots for me though, is how do we develop students to be able to take advantage of those opportunities when they get to the community college level? So, it's not just a coding class at high school, it's a mindset of how coding can actually be a solution for your challenges, for awareness, for, making the world better from elementary to middle school and beyond. And the skills that you need to become a better coder, a more effective coder, not better in terms of I know the code, but better in terms of effectiveness is developed early. So when they get to high school, it's just now the skills of coding rather than, the idea of deeper learning skills and people skills.
Okay, well, here's a plug.
I actually think that's a really important aspect of it to look at, and that's something I've been trying to address in my classes as well, when we're talking about social justice and the way different populations are treated. Sometimes it's not just the way, the tools are not totally agnostic. So it's a way, it's like Kodak film. When it first was developed not for people of color. I mean, there was total bias in the film itself and the technology. And that's true with a lot of the software and coding that's going on. So to learn what that is early on, I think is really important.
Right. And so Tony Bayless, do you guys have, I know you have a steering committee for your diversity inclusion workshops that you're going to be implementing. Do you guys have any conversation